Conrad, Singapore's been back for quite some time. We were very early in opening up, and as you say, Europe is also back in business in almost back to old levels, and yet prices of flights from Singapore to Europe are still remarkably high. What is happening in the global pricing scheme of things and the traffic and the economics of air travel right now?
Yeah, so pricing-wise, we did a quick check of about 7 million tickets a couple of months ago. And as far as we can see, globally, ticket prices have risen pretty much in line with inflation. Of course, there are spikes in markets that have very recently opened up. There are sort of some other characteristics in other markets. But broadly speaking, prices are pretty much where they need to be. The airlines are suffering from inflation like everybody else. We've also seen a spike, if you like, in jet availability. So the spread between jet and a barrel of crude is much higher than it would normally be. So that's forced airlines to keep prices, in line with inflation, a little bit higher in some cases.
Unfortunately, I don't have the actual data to hand, Conrad, but I would question whether the prices that we're seeing now are reflective simply of inflation, because they do seem to be considerably higher than what would have been a normal price some time ago. But I shall take your word for it. But then there are still imbalances around the world, obviously, with airports like Hong Kong only just opening up. So where do you see more work still needs to be done? Where are you putting your efforts in trying to get things back to normal?
So now that airports are pretty well opened up, we need to see really the other bottlenecks that affect our airlines being sorted out. So one of those is labor. And here in Hong Kong, as a good example, the government allowed the importation of foreign labor because, in fact, with the sort of spiking upwards of recovery here in Hong Kong, there weren't enough people in the airport to be able to meet the demands from the market. So that's important. We're also working very closely with the aircraft manufacturers because unfortunately, because of the COVID pandemic, there's been all sorts of problems with supply chains for Airbus and Boeing. And we've got a major delay in terms of wide-bodied deliveries, which is affecting airline ability to meet demand from passengers. And then that's new aircraft. And then for existing aircraft, we have problems with spares, again, supply chain issues, and problems with engines. So we have a situation at the moment where we don't really have enough available capacity to meet the demands of the market, and that's causing problems. We've got very high load factors in some markets.
There are a lot of macroeconomic factors. The world is dealing with inflation, a potential recession, as well as a labor shortage. What would you say is the biggest headwind for your industry?
I think it's that one about availability. Because although there's a lot of talk about recession, we see that global employment is actually very high. So that sort of suggests that maybe there isn't a recession. And we're also seeing good growth in terms of GDP, particularly the China market. Globally, we're seeing a sort of a 3% figure, which is not as high as we might want, but it's still pretty positive. China around a 5% figure, so that's better. So I think headwinds-wise, it's just the ability to fly the aircraft, given the problems with spares and new aircraft deliveries.